Welcome to the Atari ST Nostalgia GFA BASIC tour. In the previous video I showed you how to make code loops, showed you 4 different methods for doing this, and to further examine this I created some example codes that I want to run through with you, and also use that for showing or sort of practicing our troubleshooting skills to see if something goes not like we expected, how can we solve this problem. So I've made some example code. As you see, I put some markers in it. What the code does is it clears the screen, which this command is not really necessary because if you run a program it does it automatically anyway. I set 2 variables and it says I have printed and I will actually change the text because the count is now in loop number. So I changed the text because I will actually change part of the code, and the text will be grammatically incorrect if I don't change it like this. So what I do, I made 2 string variables, the count is now and in loop number, because I use a print command and I use it several times in the code, so I only have to type this text once. I actually put a marker, a label called reset counters, and what it does, there's 3 counts, 1, 2 and 3 that I use further in the code, and this command just resets it to 0. As you can see, I also use the exclamation mark here, which is just another way of putting remarks in my code, comments. You use an exclamation mark when you want to put some comment at the end of your code line in the same line. So I set text to print once to use in multiple loops, and I use this label because I will actually use it to get to this somewhere further in the code. I reset the counters and then I enter loop number 1. Now loop number 1, I will set a variable loop %, which is 1. I use that. And then I start it by a label. So count 1 is count 1 plus 1. So I set it to 1. Then I print the text, which basically will say the count is now 1 in loop number 1 in this case. Now inside this loop I have an exit strategy, and I will use the goto, if you can see. So if at some point during this code execution I have pressed the space bar, which is this RC in key string is 32, I will go to loop 2, else I will go to loop 1 and I will end my if statement. So this loop will just continue running and counting until I press the space bar. If I press the space bar, it will go to loop 2. The code for loop 2 is right here. I labeled it so the goto command works. I set the value of loop, the numeric value, to 2 to correct the print command, and I will do a do loop type of loop, which means do until I press the space bar, add the count, so set count number 2 to 1, print the count and the loop. Now I probably could have just used the same count variable in every loop, but I chose to do not to do so in this case. I don't really know why, but it doesn't matter, it works like this. So it will do the loop until I press the space bar, and if the space bar is pressed, this loop will end. I don't have to push a code, I don't have to tell it where it goes, it just will start processing code from the next line, which is the code for loop 3. In this case I labeled it loop 3 just in case, doesn't really need to. Set the loop number to 3, and in this case I will repeat and increasing the count and print the counts and loop number until the count reaches 100. If the count reaches 100 it will stop and it will start processing code from the next line, which is loop 4, which is basically the same, but instead I will use a for next statement. So for count number 4 it's 1 to 75, it will print the count and the loop number until it's ready, and after that I will say okay, you finish this code. This line says go to reset counters. Reset counters is right here, and it will start all over again. So I will test the code, it seems to work. So what happens if I run? Let's take a look. So basically the count is now in loop number 1 until I press the space bar. So I press the space bar and I'm in loop number 2. And it will stay there again until I press the space bar. Loop number 3, it will count to 100 and then automatically roll over to loop number 4. And loop number 4 will count to 75 and it will go back into loop 1. And again, I press the space bar, I'm in loop number 2. In loop number 3, it doesn't matter what I press, it will just continue the count because there's no input, exit, and in loop 4 also I pressed the space bar, but nothing happened. But now there's something strange going on. I expected actually to be in loop number 1, and it didn't. It went to loop number 3, then it looked at like it went to loop number 4, and then from there it went to loop number 2, which is right here. And so why is that? It looks a bit strange, because if I press it now once, it will go to loop number 3. Seems to work. And I don't touch anything, so yeah, it still worked, and then I'm back in loop number 1. So why did it do what it just did? Now, this is the point where we have to analyze our code, because it looks like we have something in our code that reacts in a way that we as the programmer did not expect. Now, I can already give you a spoiler. Actually, the code does exactly what the code works. The code does exactly, the program does exactly what the code tells it to do. And to analyze this, what we can do is just do it in slow motion. Here I will add a pause of, let's just say 50 seconds, 50 milliseconds. And for the loop 2, I will do the same. No, hang on, this is not correct. I should not put that pause here because it will never get executed until I exit the loop. Let's just say it will start. I will put the pause right at the beginning. That's a bit long. Let's not wait 10 seconds. Let's wait. So in this case, this loop, it will do the code, but actually it will start by waiting 1 second and then executing the code, waiting a second again. Am I at the right loop on count is? Yeah, I think that's the right place. Now here also inside the loop, I will start with the pause, so we can see we can see what's happening, and it's not it's not going off the screen. In here I will do the same. I will insert the pause 50, but I also will hang on. Because this is dependent on the count number. If I'm going to wait 10 seconds, let's just add until the count reaches 8. Actually, 5 should be enough. And the code for loop 4, I will actually do the same. Insert the pause within the loop and have it count to 5 instead of 75. So if I run the program now, you can see it's pretty slow, but it's still running. So I go to loop number 1, I go to loop number 2 until I press the space bar, and it will go into loop number 3 for 5 seconds, and it will go to loop number 4 also for 5 seconds. So it still works, which is interesting. But why didn't it work before? Now remember, I pressed the spacebar a couple of times while I was in loop 3 and 4. And when I was in loop 3 and 4, that didn't actually do anything, because they were not programmed to do anything with a spacebar press or any keyboard buffer. But let's just recreate what I did. So I pressed the spacebar to get out of loop 1. I pressed space again to get out of loop 2. Then during loop 3, I actually pressed the spacebar 2 times. But nothing happened. Then I went into loop 4 and said, look, the spacebar also doesn't do anything here. But now we can see what happens. Now this is kind of strange. I can see that I'm actually going into loop 1, but it seems to skip. It doesn't do any printout for loop 2. It goes to loop 3, then loop 4, then it goes back to loop 1 again, and then it goes to loop 2, and it sticks there. So I will stop the code. So we can look at this. Let's go to the output screen where we were. So as you can see, I have no mouse on this screen, which is a bit of a pity. But you can see that on the top after loop 3 and 4, it actually did 1 count and 1 output in loop 1. and it didn't output anything in loop 2, but it went to loop 3, then to loop 4, then it went to loop 1 again, but it immediately skipped to loop 2. And this is exactly what should be expected after pressing the spacebar 3 times during loops 3 and 4. And I will explain you why. Because, yeah, I was in loop 3, and loop 3 was just counting, but I pressed the spacebar 2 times. I was in loop 4, and I pressed it another time. It went back to reset counters, so basically it set all the counters to 0, and it started processing loop 1. Now what loop 1 does, it pauses for a second, it increases the count, it does the print statement, and then it checks the keyboard buffer if there is a spacebar in there. And of course there is, because if I press space a couple of times, it will just store everything in this in key string. It will store everything in the keyboard buffer. So there is actually a spacebar pressed there. So this if is actually positive, so it goes to loop 2. Hence only the 1 print, and it goes to loop 2. Now in loop 2, what I say do this until you see a spacebar in the keyboard buffer. So actually this loop, because of the do loop statement I use, is actually, it detects a spacebar press, another one, from the keyboard buffer, takes it as an input, and it says, okay, I should not do anything anymore, I should just break the loop and go to loop number 3. And therefore we don't even see something printed in loop 2. Then of course it goes to loop 3, which is totally independent of the keyboard buffer or any user input. It will just do the counter. Same for loop 4, and then it will go back to the beginning again and start loop 1. And loop 1 does the pause, it increases the count, it does the print, and then there is still this one spacebar press present in the keyboard buffer. And it takes it as an input, it says, okay, so I should go to loop 2, and then loop 2 starts processing. The keyboard buffer is now empty because it has really, it took all 3 spacebar presses from the keyboard buffer. So this will not fire again anymore, and it will just process loop 2 until I go to, until I press the spacebar again. So the code was actually executing exactly the way we wanted to. It just looked really weird until we watched it in slow motion. Now the way to solve this is actually, because in many programs people know that, yeah, if I have to press the spacebar at some point it will stop, and they will think, oh, it's not reacting, and they will just press the spacebar like 1,000 times, which is annoying. So the way to solve this is actually put something in the code to not only reset the counters, but also to clear the keyboard buffer. Now, clearing the keyboard buffer, what you have to do, and this is quite a complicated command, it's just in the GFA BASIC manual. It will tell you how to do. So I could not tell you all the details of this command. +6, 0. I actually have to read from my paper what it is. And I put it in this section. So what this does is actually, it will write the start and end value of the keyboard buffer, the start and end pointer. It will set them both at the first position, or at 0, like at the first position, which effectively eliminates the keyboard buffer. So if I run the code now, extra spacebar presses should not matter. And I can test this. I will remove the pauses again because they were just for analyzing stuff. And I will also count 3. I will change this count to 100 again. And for loop 4, I will also I will not count to 5, but I count to 100. So now, if I run the code again, I will do loop number 1 until I press a key. Loop number 2 until I press a key. Loop number. Okay, hang on. I forgot to remove the pause from loop 3, which I shouldn't do because I set the counter to 100, so it will take forever. I don't want to wait this long, so I will remove it here as well. Sorry for that. So I will run, and as you can see, loop number 1 will continue until I press the space bar. Same for loop number 2. Loop number 3, I can press it, but it will just wait until the counter is ready. I can press a few times here. I've got, I don't know how many space bars, but now you can see, because at the beginning the keyboard buffer is emptied, it will just say in loop number 1. So it will ignore, in the end it will just ignore any space bar press I put into loop 2 and 3. I can put as many as I want, doesn't matter. So that is a nice piece of let's say this is a bit of exception handling in the code that you should really put there. So there's another one thing that can go wrong, because here I set something and said, okay, I will do this until the count is 100, but actually counting to 100 takes quite a lot of time. So let's do this in steps of 7, and for this one I will count to 100, but in steps of 5, which is nice. So this looks really cool, which basically means the count will go to 100 way quicker, and then we'll go to loop 4. So let's see if this works. And of course, any experienced coder will already have spotted the error I made. So loop 1 will still work exactly in the same way as we expect it to be. So will loop 2. So I will go to loop 3, and I expect it to quite quickly go to loop 4, because I think I'm really smart, but really I'm just a dumbass for the mistake I made in loop 3. Let's see what happens. So loop 3, and it should count to 100, but you see it just keeps counting. It never leaves the loop, and actually I can't even do anything because I also don't have an escape key. So all I can do is just stop the program, analyze the code, and just bow my head in shame, bow my head in deep shame because of the error I made. And of course the error I made was, my condition is I will add +7, but I will only leave the loop if actually the value of the count is exactly 100. But the count of this will never become 100, because if I keep adding 7, if I do it 14 times, I have 98, which means I will do another loop, and it will add another 7, and the value will become 105, which is also not equal to 100. So it will then have passed the value it's looking for, and until infinity, or until actually this very high number that it says, okay, this is an integer value, I cannot take more than 2 billion something, what was it, very high number. So this doesn't work. So there's two ways to solve this. Actually make this a step that will that 100 is actually divisible by, so it will go, so I can make step 5 and it will work. The other one, I think I can also do, is basically do it until the count is greater than or equal than 100, because then it will work. So see, now it goes to code number 4, and it immediately loops back to number 1. It was quite fast. 3, 4, 1. So now the code seems to work. And of course these are the errors you can very easily make, and they will show you the strength and weakness of executing code. I mean, the nice thing about programming is that the code and the computer will do exactly what you tell it to do. But the bad thing about coding and programming is that the code and program will do exactly what you tell it to do, and it can lead to unexpected results. These were just 2 very simple examples of how to use your analytical thinking to solve problems in your code, which is actually one of the things I really enjoy doing. So I hope that gave you some extra insights, and I hope I didn't discourage you too much from doing coding, because still I believe coding is fun. Everybody should do it. It will help you. Sort of with your problem solving and thinking about what you want to do in very small, logical, structured steps. So I hope you enjoyed this video. The next time we will look at another way of processing user input using the standard gem dialog boxes. This video, however, is coming to an end. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you next time.